What is going on, everybody? It feels so good to press that red button. I know I haven't done the last two afterthoughts, but I'm gonna do them. I don't care if we're 2 weeks late, however many weeks late it is, we are doing these afterthoughts. Because come Flagnards, the first thing that I'm doing, the first thing that I was gonna do when I pressed that red button again was to sit here and talk about chapter 1049 of the best-selling manga in history. A lot of ideas in the noggin right now, man. I'm sure there's been a lot of community discussion this week. Haven't been able to see much of it, unfortunately, but I'm sure everything's been discussed. But I want to talk about an idea that I've had cooking for a while, that I've brought up at several different points in the afterthoughts, but now, especially after this week's chapter, I gotta talk about this hypothetical situation, which is this time skip that could potentially happen. But before we get into that, before we get into insanity post-Wano craziness, right, that could potentially go down here, I want to talk about chapter 1049's ending here for just a second, man. Because just in case you didn't watch the reaction to the chapter, this one hit me really, really hard, man. It hit me really hard because as long as I've been following this series for the last decade plus, right, this has been the major conflict, the major thing that we've been trying to overcome. We all knew we were going to have to get to Wano eventually and confront Kaido. And so to see this in this week's chapter with full Wano context now, with full Odin flashback context, to see this, to see the fact that this attack was delivered in Skypiea fashion, with the two double page spreads back to back, showcasing multiple different panels, and then Luffy stating the legendary words that he told Tama all the way back in, what was that, chapter 918, a world where my friends can eat as much food as they want. And I love how that tied that in together. And you already know when this part gets animated, with as hard as they've been going in the anime, this is going to be legendary. Soundtracks, you already know, a full-blown voice reverberating through your veins. As much as they want! Dude, yo, that's just gonna be goated. It's gonna be legendary, man. I can't wait. I can't wait. Alright, it's gonna be goat. So, of course, there is the possibilities. This is not the end of the fight. There's the possibility this is the end of the fight. There's the potential Rocks and Kaido flashback that we know for a fact it's going to happen down the line. A lot of stuff to discuss. Like I said, a lot of stuff that probably has been discussed, right? This chapter, man, it hit hard. I mean, ultimate goosebumps, both right now when I reread it and when I originally read it. As well as 1048. 1048 and 1049 work so well together. And they do so much right back to back, really showcasing the hopes and dreams of the people and what they want, what they truly want from the bottom of their heart when they're given the freedom, where they believe no one else is looking at them, where they can put out their wishes. And we've seen that through multiple different characters within the Wano arc. But to have this so clear, where them pushing, literally putting their wishes up into the air. Free us from this hell, please. Somebody kill the big scary dragon. Slay him. Slay the big scary dragon. You know, free us from Orochi. Somebody please take them out of power. It's like the adults and the kids are given this moment to wish and to dream, and we see through multiple pages just how much Kaido and Orochi have done to Wano, even more than we've already seen throughout the entire arc up until this point. To actually get to see the things that they had to go through their perspective, was just like, man, I already felt for the people of Wano. After that chapter, I was like, sweet Flagnards. And I just loved the Denjiro and Hiyori stuff, man. I really, really did. Like, to have those two be there for the past 20 years, having lived through all of this, and they're the ones who I'm going to assume have seen the end of Orochi. It was just extremely emotional stuff, and it was a fantastic double-page spread to end off 1048. Overall, really solid chapter with a lot of emotional weight behind it. Seeing the Bajrang gun, you know, the collision right there with Mr. Volcano Dragon himself, the drum dragon. I still can't believe that's the name of the attack. Yo, the dancing drums of dragons, all right? That's what I'm going to call it, because that thing was filthy. Completely filled on fire. He's burning him to a crisp. He's burning his fist to a crisp. And so when we get to 1049, and we get literally everything that we've been building throughout this entire arc, Luffy utilizing Rio Hockey with Conqueror's Coding to make sure he doesn't even have to hit Kaido. Because Kaido is so right now burning in flames due to this brand new dragon form that he brought out in the latest chapter with the drum dragon, right? And it's like he's not going to try to hit him because it's going to hurt him. So he's like, I'm going to use real hockey. I'm going to use real hockey with Conqueror's Coding, hit him from the inside. And so we have all of that training from then on out culminating here. The weight of all of the people of Wano, of all of the people that are fighting here on Onigashima, so much so that Hyogo the Flower even stated, if we die here, we're good. Because I would much rather die here and believe in the goat with the coat than ever go back to being a slave to Kaido and Orochi. And everyone felt the same way. They were like, yo, we'd rather just die right here. And I was like, yo, this is amazing. This is amazing. With them floating up in the air, right? And stating all of this, knowing who Kaido is, the unstoppable monster that he is, but still believing in the goat with the coat. It's like, I would much rather die fighting alongside that man than to ever go back to that. It's just beautiful stuff, bro. Beautiful stuff. And so when you cut back over, you see Momonosuke, which is something else we've been building towards, not just in Wano, but all the way back in Punk Hazard, all the way back in Dressrosa, all the way back in Zou. And we get to see Momonosuke finally, even though he was afraid, even though he didn't think he was going to do it. Yamato there is a support pillar. He's able to do it. He's able to ensure that Onigashima does not hit the ground, does not destroy the flower capital. He makes it land safely by actually creating the flame clouds. And it's so beautiful. The fact that that took place right next to Luffy knocking Kaido into an oblivion, getting the big scary dragon down there. You feel me? Setting him down in the flag nards. In Skypiea fashion. Ogun rifle fashion. And it's like, yo. And before reading this chapter, I just finished doing a reread of the entire last act of the fight up until that point. So when I saw this, I was like, yo, I'm ready. This is peak. This is peak. Kaido versus Luffy was already my favorite fight. This like put the nail in the seal in the deal. And don't even get me started if they go for another round. If they go for another round after this, oh! Now that's where my hypothetical situation comes in, right? But once again, before we get into that, I just really want to highlight how powerful this stuff was, because it was carrying the weight of all of the stuff that has taken place up until this point, man. And it's crazy, right? It's crazy, it's so good. And it's just like, yo, when we get this in the anime, it's going to be insane. And so when we get this full version of the Kaido Rocks flashback, because I don't know how Oda's going to handle the Kaido stuff from here on out. There's a lot of exciting possibilities with Kaido from here on out. But in regards to the rocks section of it, why he's specifically leaving out rocks, because I'm going to assume the Celestial Dragon content is going to lead us into endgame stuff. So when we find out why it was that Roger and Garp are protecting the Celestial Dragons, that is going to lead us into final endgame stuff, right? Like that could be Instant Messenger, Sama, potential, Shanks theory, all that stuff. So many different things could have taken place there in God Valley that whenever we find out, we're going to understand why it was that it wasn't shown here. Now, as for the rest of Kaido's flashback, like I said, there's a lot of possibilities with Kaido from here until the actual end of the arc. And so those are my overall thoughts. Of course, adding on to the 2 hours we spent talking in the last stream discussion, but 1040 and 1049, they work so well, and I seriously cannot wait for 1050, man. Like, this weight has been killing me, dude. This has been like a 1043 level weight, because I'm just like, brother, I just want to know what happens. I just want to know what happens next. And so that's that. Now let's talk about the potential time skip that can happen because of this, man. And the main reason why I say time skip is because of what Oda could potentially do after this arc. And it's mainly due to, now, this is where I got this idea from. When I first read chapter 1044 and Luffy entered Gear 5th, the first thing I thought of when we entered the Afterthoughts part of the discussion was the consequences of Gear 5th. And we've thought about many different things. We've talked about many different things. And this is one of them. And it's an idea that stuck with me because it seems so probable and possible with the stuff happening around the world. So the consequences of Gear 5th. There are two different ways that I believe Oda can go about this in regards to getting us to whether or not something like this is even possible. And that is the hypothetical scenario of if Kaido gets back up again to fight Luffy one more time. If Kaido gets back up to fight Luffy again, and Luffy is forced to go into Gear 5th another time for a third time, with just 2, I'm already on the edge of believing that he's going to die at the end of this. Like that Luffy is going to have to die. Law uses the immortality operation, which has been talked about since Dressrosa. Even I don't want Law to die, so I don't want Luffy to die. It's like, yo, Luffy, even if you're hanging on by this much, don't die, bruh. I'm not trying to let go of my dog, Law. You know what I'm saying? And so all of that is going to have to come into fruition. There's going to be massive consequences for Gear 5th. He's already used it twice. If Kaido gets back up and Luffy enters it again, oh, he's dead. He's dead. All right? And this is the thing. Regardless of the scenario that we have, Kaido gets back up, they have to throw down again in G5. Or this is the end, at the very least, of the Luffy fighting Kaido section in G5, because he could actually still fight him in base form. You know, they could have like a Z level battle where they're just throwing hands or something. Or Kaido, when he gets back up, he's going to do something else other than fight Luffy, which is what we talked about in the actual stream itself. But regardless of all of that, when Luffy's Gear 5th is done and the consequences of Gear 5th start hitting, this is where things get very, very interesting in regards to the way the end of this arc's gonna go. Because we know what's happening around the world at this point in time. We know that Wano's borders are closed to receiving information from the outside world. And so with that being said, imagine this. Imagine a scenario where Luffy, utilizing Gear 5th, is knocked out bare minimum for a couple weeks, a month, several months. Hypothetical scenario, right? Several weeks, month, couple months. I don't care how good Law and Chopper are as doctors, everyone is exhausted after this. Especially after Gear 5th, Luffy might not get back up for a minute. As a matter of fact, there's no guarantee Luffy's even up when we move to the next island. But the reason why I don't think that's a very likely scenario is because they still have to have that party. And that party can happen a month from now, right? That party can happen whenever. My thing is, even beyond the Grand Fleet showing up because his favorite card potentially goes up into flames, but I'm talking about him being knocked out here, you know, because there's always gonna be the possibility of him dying. But him just being knocked out, Grand Fleet's kept out, and Grand Fleet moves in at the during the final saga, right? My whole thing is this: if Luffy's knocked out for that period of time, what is Oda going to do with that period of time? Because he can go about it in 2 ways. Either we follow it from Luffy's perspective, so he wakes back up, and then we see what has happened to the world while he was asleep, or we go around the world and then cut back to Luffy when he wakes up. Which route is Oda going to take? Are we going to see what is happening around the world in the same way we did in Dressrosa, for example, right? Where Luffy was knocked out, but we got to see what was happening around the world at the time before he woke up, got his Grand Fleet officially, and then they set off to go to Zou. So are we going to have something like that again? Except, of course, because it's post-Wano, we know what's happening around the world. We know stuff is popping off all over the place. And so what scares me is the other scenario. What scares me is the scenario where Luffy does not wake up for a long time and Oda decides to skip all of that time, where we don't know what happens. Because then that is going to be the biggest mystery ever. Could you imagine? Could you imagine a scenario where Luffy wakes up and dog, you get the newspaper, the news coup, I don't care how many weeks, months it is later, and everything, the whole world has changed. The just hypothetical scenarios, SSG is running rampant, right? And the Shichibukai, maybe one of them is dead. Sabo is still on the loose. Dragon has declared war on the Celestial Dragons. Shanks, Blackbeard. And so what this allows is for anything to happen whenever we go into the next arc, because we've already moved into final saga stuff. You know, and I really hope that even if we wake up in Luffy's perspective, that we go like, oh, this is what happened in the time whenever Luffy was knocked out. and we get to see all the craziness happening. Because while Luffy's knocked out, that gives us a perfect opportunity to see what's happening around the world. Like, it gives us the perfect opportunity to be like, okay, Sabo here, Dragon here, Shanks here, Dragon, Instant Messenger Sama. It gives us all of those potential scenarios, but that has to take place while Luffy's knocked out. And this is what makes post Wano so interesting to me, because when Luffy wakes back up, I don't know how long it's going to be after that, but then we're going to find out who new crew members, bounties, the opening of the borders, all of this stuff, right? All of this stuff is going to take place. And so it just makes me wonder, how are we going to go about this? How in all of Onigashima are we going to go about this? Because it's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy. Because it's like, yo, regardless of however Oda handles it, in that period of time when Luffy's knocked out, son, the world is in chaos. We're going to have to follow somebody's perspective. Someone's perspective has to be followed. And you already know my man's going to go around the world. So it's going to be like, yo, imagine Luffy goes down, he's knocked out, we cut over and we see Sabo and Vivi. We see Dragon not in his seat. We see Dragon pulling up to Instant Messenger Sama and be like, dog, it's time. And then that man, Instant Messenger Sama's going to look Dragon right in the eyes and he's going to be like, did you know that your son was Nika? Whoa! Stop playing with me! Shanks? Dog, this further proves and or gives us a general idea of Shanks could genuinely show up here, bro. He could genuinely show up here because think about it. Luffy's knocked out for a couple weeks here in Wano. Whatever's happening around the world, bro, listen to me. If Shanks can make it up to the Mighty Joe, he can make it over to Luffy. Unless he's fighting Blackbeard, right? Unless he's fighting Blackbeard and Oda's already deciding to go down into the insanity there. But if he doesn't, this is perfect. This is perfect because whether we meet Shanks at the end of Wano, in Wano, we get a Roger and Whitebeard sake situation just like they had initially there, or they'll have it with Luffy and Shanks here in the same place. Who knows, man? That would be awesome. But it's probably going to take place in either Wano or Elbaf. I don't care where it takes place. I just want it to happen, right? And I think with a time skip, it would allow for the insane stuff happening around the world to, I'm not going to say calm down, but enter the next stage to where everything officially starts kickstarting the final saga. And while that's happening, Luffy's asleep. So when he wakes back up, Sabo Vivricard, you know what I'm saying? All of this stuff is going to be going nuts. We finally leave Wano, borders open, new Nakamon, all that stuff. And then what we see in the new world is a world that is completely different than the one that we left, right? Whenever we initially entered Wano. And so entering the final saga, now the Straw Hats, and potentially us as the viewers as well, have to solve the mysteries of what took place all around the world. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be a crazy, crazy time, especially because there's also the scenario that Luffy himself doesn't even wake up. Could you imagine Luffy's up for the party? Let's just say they party all night tonight. But because of the effects of Gear 5th, he does not get back up. And so they have to move. Something happens to where even without Luffy saying it, because Luffy and Zoro are going to be down, they have to move. They got to get out of there. And so they have to get into the next destination without even Luffy being awake. And so there's a lot of potential scenarios, man. A lot of possibilities. But all of it's going to take place because of the consequences of Gear 5th. The consequences of Gear 5th are going to be huge. You know, in its most extreme, he's going to die. And he's going to force Law to use the immortality operation. And at bare minimum, he's going to be knocked out for several weeks. And what's going to happen in those several weeks? The insanity around the world, man. And so what we're about to see, thanks to the consequences of Gear 5th, is going to be some mega peak fiction. I mean, the peakest of peak. Are you kidding me? All this stuff happening around the world, and the Straw Hats can't do anything about it because the borders of Wano are not open to receiving news, and Luffy's going to be knocked out, so he's not going to be able to sense it. He can't see the Vivricard. He's not going to be able to see any of that. He's not going to be awake. And look, whatever Oda's cooking here for post-Wano leading into the final saga, because this is going to lead into the final saga. Like, all this post-Wano stuff is going to be our build-up for the final arc of the series, for the final saga of the series. And so a lot of insanity can happen here, man. And it's going to be due to the consequences of G5. And so I look forward to seeing what all of you have to say about that in the comments down below. But until next time, I will see y'all. So excited for chapter 1050, man. I cannot wait for this chapter. It's going to be one of those chapters, even if nobody tells me to get off social media, I'm going to get off social media. Because I've waited for this chapter for so long, the anticipation of wanting to find out what's going to happen in 1050, I'm not going to take a single risk. This week, I'm just going to not check anything, right? I'm just going to, we're good. I'm not going to get spoiled in this one. So I will see y'all next time. Have an awesome day. Goat, peace, greatness, man.